Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Flicks the Church Forgot. My name is Peter Laws. Now before we dive into some horror reviews tonight, I just want to point out that if you are around in England, in Sheffield, on May the 13th or 14th of this year, 2017, then why not come to HorrorCon, where I'm going to be appearing at the Magnus Centre. I'll be signing copies of my new novel, Purged, but also I'll be hosting a Q&A session with John Jarratt, who's the star of Wolf Creek 1 and 2, as well as the TV series. If you've got any questions for John or for some of the other films that he's been plenty more, then do come along to that. There's going to be a lot of other horror guests there too, including Sid Haig, Hege Langenkamp from Nightmare on Elm Street, and none other than Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So that would be really worth coming along to. If you're there, come and say hi. If you want to, you can buy a signed copy of Purged. I'll be there with crayon in hand, but don't feel you have to do that. Just come and say hi anyway. If you want an idea of what HorrorCon's like, by the way, you can just check out my YouTube channel for video coverage of the last 2 years. Also, as some of you will already no doubt know, as well as being a novelist these days, I'm also currently working on a non-fiction book for a different publisher called Icon, which is exploring why people are drawn to the morbid and the macabre, perhaps like you and perhaps like me. The deadline for that is the end of August, and so I'm going to be working exclusively hell for leather on that for the next few months. So apologies if there aren't many podcasts or YouTube shows that will come out over that time. But there's a lot to do, you see, not least because my second novel called Unleashed, which is a follow-up to Purged, that book is coming out on July the 20th, so there's various things to do for that as well as the non-fiction. If you want to keep up to date with all of this stuff, then do follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Rev Peter Laws, or at Facebook at The Flicks the Church Forgot, or check out my website, peterlaws.co.uk. But for now, let's turn our attention to tonight's films, which are magnifique. Well, most of you will already be aware that in Britain we have decided to leave the European Union. It's called Brexit. And when it comes to the Brexit negotiations with the EU, there's one demand that I absolutely insist on. We have got to retain the free movement of European horror movies. It's true their presence on our shores may sometimes take the shelf space from other more homegrown titles, but if we let these films into our country, I really think they can both enrich and enhance our culture with their pink bloody spurts, their funky bass soundtracks, and their leather-gloved killers. Like, for example, Dario Argento's Phenomena from 1985, which is just out from Arrow. Here, Jennifer Connelly plays a teenage insect lover who strokes bees and summons telepathic flies while trying to escape a homicidal chimp who's running around with a razor blade. Also known as Creepers, this film is a decapitation riot with Donald Pleasance putting in an amusing Scottish accent as a paraplegic entomologist. There's one of the most bizarrely placed music cues in Phenomena you'll ever see in a film. It really stood out when I first saw it. An important character sadly dies, and as they are taken off into an ambulance, Argento scores this touching, thoughtful moment by loudly playing Locomotive by Motorhead. And you're like, at first, huh? And then you're like, wow. Arrow's new release of the film is packed with extras and alternative versions, as well as a CD copy of the score. By the way, the CD copy that you get with it, it doesn't have some of the songs on it, so don't expect to get those Motorhead tracks like Flash of the Blade. And there's no Bill Wyman track on here that has the opening of the film called Valley. I had the soundtrack to this on cassette way back in the day, and I played it over and over again, and particularly the main title from Claudio Simonetti, which I think is a fantastic piece of music. Anyway, next up we get two 70s giallos from Emilio Miraglia. In the night Evelyn came out of the grave, in 1971, a kinky aristocrat loses his wife, so he tries to move on by luring women to his castle. He marries again, but then people start dying horribly. Has Evelyn returned for vengeance? Well, you'll find out in this nice little horror movie, but I actually preferred the one that came after it, and which is also now available, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times, which is out now. The film from 1972 opens like an Italian horror version of Disney's Frozen. Two little sisters are struggling to play normally. The reason is because one of them simply cannot control her anger. In the first reel, she grabs her sister's doll and stabs it in the face right in front of a horrified grandpa. So there's not much conceal, don't feel going on here. But could the sister's inner instinct for violence be actually part of an age-old family curse? Years later, it seems that it may well be, because workers at a mid-range fashion house, we do fashion for ordinary people, they start getting stabbed. Now, admittedly, Alan Turing might have struggled to follow the plot at times, it's that complicated at moments, but this is actually a very elaborate and absorbing, stylish whodunit, with gothic chills and a killer score. Oh, and you'll also see Sybil Danning in this, who would turn up years later as Stilba, the werewolf bitch, in Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf. What more recommendation do you want? Next up, we have Pieces from 1982, and surely this Spanish film is one of the most entertaining slasher movies ever made. It's like a mashup of Murder, She Wrote and Friday the 13th, I suppose. Only there's way more gore and way more laughs than either of those. The first 20 minutes says it all, really. A mum catches her young son doing a jigsaw of a naked girl, and he's almost just about to fit the final piece between her legs, of course. But the mum comes in, she goes all Victorian dad, she flips out, she tries to burn this pornographic jigsaw, and so he hacks her to pieces, basically. Get it? Pieces. The next scene, we get a girl randomly rollerblading through a mirror. The next scene, a student gets her head chainsawed off, and the rest of the film is like this jumpily edited, ridiculous delight. Some of the killings are proper brutal, by the way, so you'll need a strong gut, I think, for some of this stuff, because some of it's pretty violent. But I think you'll be laughing throughout if you can get the joke. It's also got one of the finest uses of the word bastard in movie history. The Arrow package is a real treat too. It's got a bunch of extras, but also, like Phenomena, it comes complete with the funky soundtrack. I do hope they keep doing this, because it's genius to include this music as well. Okay, well we'll turn from Spain to France for Zombie Lake from 1981. Do you like Nazis? Do you like zombies? Do you like pendulous breasts? Well, holy moly, you have found your perfect movie in this French horror nudie cutie. This tale of a lakeside town terrorized by long-dead soldiers a lot of people find this really boring, but I found it surprisingly gentle-hearted. Even the scenes of Nazi ghouls chomping down on bathers looks more like kissing than eating. And even the sexual element to this feels kind of innocent too. There's no hardcore romping here. It's just kind of ladies stripping and frolicking in the water. It's like an old nature documentary. I thought it was quite an enjoyable little horror movie with some really nice photography, and it looks actually excellent, even if this has only been released on DVD. And the disc has an extra I've never seen in my life. Alternative clothed scenes. Who'd have thought it? Finally, we have Crimson from 1976, which is also known as The Man with the Severed Head. It's a horror thriller peppered with random scenes of soft porn. As you can see, the Europeans do enjoy their sex on screen. It has Paul Naschy as a crime boss who gets shot in the head, and naturally the only solution is a brain transplant, so they get a brain from Naschy's arch enemy, another crime boss called the Sadist. Now, when the henchmen tried to decapitate the Sadist, they realized they've lost their knife. And so they go for the next most logical way of severing a head. They chop it off with a train. It's like bizarre plot choices like this that I think makes some Euro horror films a complete turn-off for some audiences. But if you want your entertainment culture rich, fun, and spicy, then I implore you, keep the horror borders open and embrace a little bit of Euro horror. Well, that's it for the Flicks the Church Forgot. And don't forget to get in touch and subscribe and share, or visit Twitter at Rev Peter Laws or Instagram. or come along to the Flicks That Church Forgot on Facebook, or come and meet me in person. I'd love to meet you at Sheffield HorrorCon. But until next time, thanks for watching, and don't forget the Flicks That Church Forgot. Auf Wiedersehen.